Kaia's hands were cracked and bleeding from chopping wood, but she barely noticed. Pain had become background noise over the past 3 years, as constant and unremarkable as the howling wind through the mountain peaks. She lived alone in a cabin so remote that even the toughest trappers avoided it, carving out an existence from the frozen ground and unforgiving wilderness. She told herself she preferred it this way. No one could reject you if you never let anyone close. No one could call you cursed if you never gave them the chance. "Where are you watching from?" she thought bitterly. "I hope you've never been called a harbinger of death by the person meant to love you. Never been cast out by your entire pack for misfortunes you didn't cause. Never learned to trust silence more than promises." The sky was turning that particular shade of gray, the one that signaled a blizzard was coming. Not just any storm, but one of the mountain's legendary tempests that could bury a cabin under snow for days. Kaia had 3 years of experience reading these skies now. She had maybe 4 hours before the worst hit. She stacked the last of the firewood against the cabin's exterior wall enough to keep her warm for a week if she was careful. Her stores were full. Her water barrels were filled from the spring before it froze. She had meat smoking in the small shed, preserved vegetables in the root cellar, and enough dried herbs to make medicine if needed. She had learned to be prepared. The mountain didn't forgive mistakes. Kaia was securing the shutters when she heard it a howl. Distant but unmistakable. Not the territorial call of a wild wolf, but something else. Pain. Desperation. The sound of something dying. She froze her hands, still gripping the wooden shutter. Every survival instinct she'd honed over 3 years screamed at her to ignore it. Not your problem. Not your pack. Not your responsibility. The mountain was full of predators and prey, life and death happening every moment in the frozen wilderness. Why should this be any different? But the howl came again, closer now, and Kaia recognized something in it that made her chest ache. It sounded like how she'd felt 3 years ago when her mate had looked at her with disgust and declared the bond broken in front of the entire pack. When they'd called her cursed and driven her into exile alone, abandoned, certain of death she had survived. Maybe whatever was out there could too. Cursing herself for a fool, Kaia grabbed her heavy fur cloak, strapped a knife to her belt, and headed into the forest. The wind was already picking up snow, beginning to fall in fat, heavy flakes. She had an hour, maybe less, before visibility went to 0. The howl guided her. Kaia moved through the trees with the silent efficiency of someone who had learned to hunt or starve. 3 years in the wilderness had stripped away the softness of pack life, leaving her lean, hard and capable in ways she'd never been before. Her platinum blonde hair was braided tight against her skull, her ice blue eyes constantly scanning for threats. She found him in a clearing and her breath caught. He was massive, easily the largest wolf she'd ever seen, with fur that was pure white, fading to gold at the tips like sunlight on fresh snow. Even collapsed and clearly dying, he radiated power. "Alpha," her instincts whispered. Not just any alpha. Something more. Black veins spiderwebbed under his white fur, visible and wrong. Poison. Kaia had read about this in the old books her mother had left her. The only inheritance besides the knowledge of herbs and healing, moonbane the texts called it. A poison specifically designed to trap shifters in their animal forms, to kill them slowly while preventing them from calling for help in human speech. It was supposed to be extinct, forbidden the knowledge of how to make it lost centuries ago. The wolf's amber eyes found hers, and even through the delirium of poison, she saw intelligence, recognition. He tried to rise to defend himself or attack her. She couldn't tell which. A low growl rumbled from his massive chest. "Easy," Kaia said softly, dropping to her knees in the snow despite every survival instinct telling her this was suicide. "I'm not here to hurt you, though you're doing a pretty good job of that yourself." The wolf's legs gave out and he collapsed again. His breathing labored. The black veins were spreading, reaching toward his heart. He had hours, maybe less, and with the blizzard coming, even if she somehow saved him from the poison exposure, would kill them both. Kaia should leave, should turn around, go back to her cabin, bar the door and let nature take its course. This wolf was someone else's problem, someone else's tragedy. She'd learned the hard way that trying to help only brought pain. But she couldn't. Despite everything, despite the 3 years of carefully constructed walls, she couldn't leave, something to die alone in the snow. "This is probably the stupidest thing I've ever done," she muttered, moving closer. The wolf tried to snap at her, but the movement was weak, uncoordinated. She caught his massive head in her hands, looked directly into those fading amber eyes. "I once tried to convince a pack that rejected me to give me a second chance." "So that's saying something," Kaia whispered. "But I'm going to try to save you. Try being the key word. You're about 3 times my size, and we've got maybe 40 minutes before this blizzard kills us both. So I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" The wolf stared at her. For a long moment nothing happened. Then impossibly he laid his head down in the snow. Submission. Trust. From an alpha to an omega, which should have been impossible. Kaia didn't waste time questioning it. She assessed the situation with the cold practicality that the mountain had taught her. She couldn't carry him. He had to weigh at least 250 pounds, maybe more, but she could drag him. She removed her cloak, the cold biting immediately through her layers. Working quickly, she fashioned a crude sling, tying the corners together. Then, using every bit of strength 3 years of survival had given her, she levered the wolf onto the cloak. "If you survive this, you owe me a new cloak," she told him, gripping the tied corners. "This was my best one." She pulled. The wolf barely moved. Kaia gritted her teeth, planted her feet in the deep snow, and pulled harder. Her muscles screamed in protest, the cold already seeping through her layers now that her cloak was gone. The wolf slid forward 6 inches. The snow was falling harder now, the wind picking up to a howl that matched the desperation rising in her chest. Kaia could barely see the trees anymore, the world reduced to the swirling white and stinging ice. But she knew these woods had to know them to survive. The cabin was north-northeast from here, maybe 2 miles. 2 miles that might as well have been 20 with a dying wolf in tow and a blizzard trying to kill them both. She pulled again and again. The wolf was dead weight, his massive body like an anchor. The snow actually helped providing a slick surface for the cloak to slide across, but it also hid roots and rocks and treacherous dips that could break an ankle or worse. Kaia's world narrowed to a single focus. Pull, step, breathe. Pull, step, breathe. Her hands were already numb despite her gloves, the rough rope edges of her cloak cutting into her palms. She'd have blisters and cuts when this was over if they survived. The wind hit her like a punch, nearly knocking her off her feet. She staggered, caught herself, and kept pulling. The wolf made a low, pained sound. She looked down, finding his amber eyes fixed on her, even in his poisoned delirium. Somehow he seemed to understand what she was doing and the price it was costing her. "Don't look at me like that," she gasped, her breath frosting in the bitter air, her lungs burning from the frigid wind. "I'm not doing this because I'm good. I'm doing it because I'm too damn stubborn to let you die. There's a difference." Another pull, another few feet gained. Kaia's legs were shaking now, her thighs aching from the effort of walking through snow that was almost knee-deep. She had been strong once before exile. 3 years of survival had made her even stronger. But there were limits to what desperation could achieve. Her foot caught on a hidden root and she went down hard, her grip on the cloak slipping. She lay there for a moment, face down in the snow, her body begging her to just rest. Just for a minute. Just close her eyes. The cold felt almost comfortable now, which she knew was a dangerous sign. That was how hypothermia worked. It made you feel warm and sleepy right before it killed you. The wolf whined. A small sound from such a large creature, barely audible over the storm's roar, but it sliced through Kaia's exhaustion like a blade. He was still alive, still fighting. How could she quit when he hadn't? "I hate you a little bit," she muttered to him, forcing herself to her feet. Her legs shook so badly, she almost collapsed again. "Just so you know, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done. And I once tried to convince a pack to give me a second chance when they wanted me gone." She grabbed the cloak corners again, her hands clumsy and unresponsive from the cold, but her will was stronger than the freezing numbness. She pulled. The cabin had to be close. She'd been walking for what felt like hours, but it had probably only been 45 minutes. The landmarks she relied on were buried under snow or hidden by the whiteout conditions, but her instincts screamed that she was going the right way. Home was just ahead. Kaia stumbled into a tree. She hadn't seen the impact shooting pain through her shoulder. She bounced off and kept moving. Pull, step, breathe. The rhythm was all that mattered. Everything else, the cold, the pain, the very real possibility of death, was just noise to ignore. The wolf's breathing changed. It became more shallow, rapid. The black veins had spread further, reaching toward his heart. If she didn't get him inside soon to warmth and medicine, the poison would win. He'd die right here in the snow, and she'd have dragged a corpse through a blizzard for nothing. "Don't you dare die on me," she snarled at him, her voice raw. "I didn't come this far to watch you quit. Stay alive, damn you. Just stay alive until I can get you home." The cabin finally appeared out of the white like a miracle. Her door was just ahead. Kaia had never been so grateful to see anything in her life. With strength she didn't know she had left, she hauled the wolf up the 2 steps to the porch, shouldered open the door with her hip, and dragged him inside. The moment the door shut behind them, cutting off the wind's scream, Kaia's legs gave out. She collapsed beside the wolf, her chest heaving, her entire body one massive ache. She couldn't feel her hands or feet. Her face was so numb she wasn't sure she still had one, but they were inside. They were alive. For now. And Kaia had no idea how to save him. She forced herself to her feet, every muscle protesting. The fire in the hearth had burned low. She added more wood, coaxed it back to life, then turned her attention to the wolf. He was too large to move, so she brought her supplies to him: clean water, clean cloths, and her collection of dried herbs. "I need you to shift back," she told him, knowing it was pointless. "Moonbane specifically prevents shifting. That's its purpose. I can't treat you properly in this form." The wolf's eyes were closed now, his breathing growing more labored. Kaia's hands trembled as she mixed a poultice that might, if she were very lucky, slow the poison. But she knew the truth. Moonbane had no antidote. Once it entered your system, you died. The only question was how long it took. "I didn't drag you through a blizzard for you to die in my cabin." Kaia's voice broke as she spoke, though she didn't even know this wolf. "I don't know your name, your pack, or why someone poisoned you with something that shouldn't even exist anymore. But I've spent 3 years alone, and I can't stand to watch anything die, especially someone who trusted me enough to be vulnerable." She pressed the poultice to his chest over his heart, where the black veins were the thickest. The wolf's eyes cracked open, meeting hers. And in that moment, something shifted inside Kaia. A warmth spread through her chest, radiating out like the first thaw after a brutal winter. Her hands began to glow. Soft golden light poured from her palms, spreading across the wolf's white fur. Kaia gasped, trying to pull away, but she couldn't. Her hands were locked in place, the light growing brighter, hotter until it hurt. The wolf convulsed his body, arching, and Kaia felt the poison like it was in her own body. Cold, oily wrong. It spread through her veins like liquid darkness. And somehow, impossibly, she was pulling it out. The process was agony. The poison fought, clinging to the wolf's life force like a parasite terrified of being torn away. But Kaia held on, gritting her teeth against the pain. The black veins on the wolf's fur began to recede, the darkness flowing toward her hands into her hands. It was killing her. She could feel it, the poison trying to take root in her own body. But she was an Omega, and Omegas were healers by nature. Even if she'd never shown any gift before, Her body knew how to break it down, how to expel it. Black liquid began seeping from her skin, dripping onto the floor like tar. The wolf's breathing eased the tension leaving his massive frame. The black veins disappeared completely, and his white gold fur was pristine once more. Kaia's vision blurred around the edges. She had given everything she had. The poison that should have killed 10 wolves was inside her now. Her body was shutting down. She had just enough time to think that this was a stupid way to die saving a stranger before unconsciousness claimed her. She woke to warmth, not the biting cold of the mountain or the desperate warmth of a barely fed fire, but the solid, steady warmth of another body. Kaia's eyes flew open, and she found herself staring at a bare, very muscular chest. She jerked back or tried to, but strong arms tightened around her, holding her in place. Easy. A deep voice rumbled hoarse from disuse or pain, or maybe both. You've been out for hours. Don't move too fast. Kaia tilted her head back and looked up into the most striking face she'd ever seen. The man holding her had hair the color of honeyed gold, cascading past his shoulders in waves that should have seemed feminine, but instead they only made him appear more masculine. His face was carved from strong lines, sharp angles, with a jaw that could cut glass, and full lips that softened the edges of his hard features. But it was his eyes that held her attention. Amber gold, like whiskey in sunlight. The same eyes that had watched her from the face of a wolf as she dragged him through a blizzard. You shifted, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He smirked, lips twitching in what could only be amusement. Whatever you did, it saved my life, he said, his expression turning serious. But it nearly killed you. I woke up to find you unconscious, covered in black residue that smelled like death. What were you thinking? Kaia snapped, her frustration bubbling over. I was thinking I didn't drag a 250-pound wolf through a blizzard just to watch him die on my floor. She tried to pull away from his hold, but he let her go. His hands lingered for a moment before releasing her. She sat up and immediately regretted it. Her head spun. Her stomach lurched, and every muscle in her body screamed in protest. She had overtaxed herself. Every reserve was gone. It would take days to recover. The man moved with fluid grace, despite having been on the edge of death less than a day ago. He wore pants now, though his chest remained bare, her pants which were at least 6 inches too short on him, but provided some modesty. Sorry about the pants, he said, following her gaze. Yours were the only ones here. I didn't think you'd want me walking around naked. Considerate of you, Kaia muttered, forcing herself to her feet, though she swayed slightly. The man reached out to steady her, but she waved him off. I'm fine, you're clearly not fine. You nearly died saving me, she replied, her voice soft with concern. Yeah, well, I have a habit of making stupid decisions. It's kind of my thing, he replied with a chuckle. Kaia moved toward the fireplace, more to put distance between them than because she needed to check the fire. Her heart raced. Her skin felt too hot and she couldn't quite catch her breath. The mate bond. It was trying to activate with him, with this stranger who had been a dying wolf just 12 hours ago. No, absolutely not. She'd been through this before, had the bond form, only to be savagely rejected. She wasn't doing it again. Whatever this was, whatever pull she felt toward him, she'd bury it deep and ignore it until it went away. What's your name? The man asked, his deep voice coming closer than she expected. She hadn't heard him move. Kaia, she responded, the word slipping out before she could stop it. Kaia, he repeated, tasting the name on his lips. I'm Kael. Kaia froze. She had heard that name before. Everyone had. Kael, the Alpha King, who'd claimed the throne 5 years ago after his father's sudden death. Kael, who was known for his ruthless politics, but also for his fairness in judgment. Kael, who had spent years searching for his mate without success. Her blood ran cold. You're the Alpha King. I am. Kael said it simply, without arrogance. Does that change things? She asked, spinning to face him. It changes everything. she added. What were you doing alone in the mountains? She demanded. Why were you poisoned? And why am I just now finding out that I dragged the most important wolf in the kingdom through a blizzard like a sack of potatoes? Kale's lips quirked into a half-smile that transformed his harsh features into something almost boyish. I was on a hunting trip with 3 of my council members. We were tracking an elk when I started feeling off. By the time I realized I'd been poisoned, it was too late. I couldn't shift back. I couldn't speak to defend myself or call for help. I managed to escape before they could finish me off, but the poison spread too fast. They poisoned you, your own council. 3 of them, I think. Kaia's expression hardened. Not the whole council. They probably thought leaving me to die in wolf form would look like a hunting accident. No investigation. No questions. Just an unfortunate tragedy. But you don't remember what happened. Who exactly poisoned you? Kale shook his head, frustration clear on his face. The poison affected my memory. I remember the hunt starting. I remember feeling strange. Then nothing. 12 hours are just gone. Kaia processed this stunned. Someone had tried to assassinate the Alpha King, using a poison that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. They had nearly succeeded. Would have succeeded if Kaia hadn't been too stubborn to let him die. So what now? She asked. You go back to the palace and pretend nothing happened. Your would-be murderers are probably telling everyone you're dead right now, she said sharply. No, Kale replied quietly. I don't pretend nothing happened, but I also can't reveal what actually happened until I know who to trust. His amber eyes found hers intense and searching. Which is why I need to ask you something, Kaia. What you did last night pulling the poison out of me, that's not normal Omega healing. That's a gift. A very rare gift. Kaia shifted uncomfortably. I don't know what I did. I just wanted you to live. And something inside me responded. It's never happened before. It's called purification, Kale said. The ability to extract poisons, curses, and dark magic from living beings. There have only been a handful of wolves with that gift in recorded history. It's considered one of the most powerful healing abilities. Great, Kaia said flatly. Another reason for people to fear me. Kael's expression sharpened. Why would people fear you? Kaia laughed, though there was no humor in it. Because everywhere I go, bad things seem to follow. My first pack lost 3 children to fever when I was 16. My mate bond formed with someone who looked at me and called me cursed. Said I smelled like death. My pack exiled me 3 years ago because they believed I was bringing them bad luck. Forgive me if I'm not thrilled about discovering I have some rare gift. In my experience, special just means trouble. The silence that followed was heavy. When Kaia finally looked at Kael, she was surprised by the fury in his eyes. He rejected you, Kael said, his voice dangerously quiet. Your mate rejected you publicly, and with witnesses, Kaia confirmed. It's fine. I'm over it. You're not over it, Kael insisted. You live alone in a cabin, so remote that most wolves would die trying to reach it. You were willing to die saving a stranger, rather than risk getting close to anyone. That's not over it, Kaia. That's trauma. Kaia flinched. You don't know me. I know enough, Kael said, his voice softening. I know you're strong enough to drag a full-grown alpha through a killing blizzard. I know you have a gift that could save countless lives. I know you were rejected by someone too blind to see what he had. And I know... He stopped, jaw clenching. What? Kaia demanded. I know you're my mate, Kael said quietly. I felt the bond the moment I woke up in this cabin. And I'm guessing you feel it too, which is why you're practically vibrating with the urge to run. Kaia's breath caught. The bond. Of course he'd felt it. She'd been so focused on denying it, on suppressing the pull, that she hadn't considered he might already know. I won't do this again, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I won't let myself go through another rejection. So if you're planning to tell me the bond is a mistake, that something's wrong with me, just say it now. Don't drag it out. Kyle stepped closer and Kaia backed up until she hit the wall. He braced his hands on either side of her head, caging her in, but not touching her. I'm going to say this very clearly, so there's no misunderstanding. Kyle's voice was steady yet full of determination. You are not wrong. You are not cursed. You don't smell like death. You smell like winter pine and something sweet I can't name. And the mate bond between us is not a mistake. It's the first thing in months that's felt right. Kaia whispered, You don't know me. Then let me, Kyle said. We're trapped here until the blizzard passes. Could be days. Let me get to know you. And if after that you still want me to leave, I will. But I'm not rejecting you, Kaia. That's not happening. Kaia's eyes stung with unshed tears. She wanted to believe him more than anything, but trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. The blizzard will pass in 2 days, she said instead of responding to his implied question. Maybe 3. Then you can leave. 2 days then, Kyle agreed, not moving. It's 2 days for you to see that I mean what I say. The blizzard lasted 5 days. 5 long days trapped in the small cabin with a man who was supposed to be a king, but instead spent his time helping her chop firewood, prepare meals, and keep their survival in check. 5 days of awkward conversations that slowly became something real. On the first full day, they were still tentative with each other. Kel was weak from the poison's effects, his body still recovering from nearly dying. Kaia was drained from the rescue and healing process, her muscles aching. They moved around the space, carefully avoiding touch, avoiding eye contact, both hyper-aware of the mate bond humming between them. You don't have to take care of me, Kale said when Kaia brought him some soup. You nearly died yesterday, Kaia replied, her voice gentle. Humor me. By the second day, the conversation came easier. Kyle shared stories of the pressure of ruling, how constant political maneuvering drained him, the loneliness of sitting on a throne where no one could be trusted. He spoke of his father's sudden death, leaving him to take the throne at only 23 with no preparation. For 5 years he had looked over his shoulder, wondering who he could trust. That sounds exhausting, Kaia said as she mended one of her shirts by the fire while Kale sat nearby, supposedly reading, though his attention was mostly on her. It is, Kale admitted. I love my kingdom, but sometimes I wonder what it would be like to just be normal. To not have everyone watching my every move, analyzing every decision I make. Normal is overrated, Kaia replied, a small smile tugging at her lips. Trust me. Tell me about your childhood. Kel asked, his voice quiet as though this was something important. So Kaia did. She told him about her mother, a healer who had taught her everything she knew about herbs and medicine before dying from the same fever that had taken 3 children from her pack. She spoke of her father, a strong and kind warrior who had died in a hunting accident when Kaia was 15. She described the slow horror of watching her packmates pull away from her after her mother's death. The whispers that followed her, the way they avoided her as though she carried some curse. I didn't understand it at first, Kaia said softly. I thought maybe I smelled bad or said something wrong. But then I overheard someone say it out loud. Bad things happen around that girl. Her mother dies, then those children, then her father. She's cursed. And once one person said it, everyone started believing it. But you weren't cursed, Kale said, his voice sharp with anger. Wasn't I? Kaia murmured. 3 people I loved died. And when my mate bond formed and Zane rejected me, that seemed like proof enough. The pack exiled me for everyone's safety. I was 19 and suddenly completely alone. Kaia set down the shirt she was mending and stared into the fire. I should have died. That first winter I nearly did, but I was too angry to quit. Too stubborn to prove them all right by dying in the snow. On the 3rd day, Kael found her crying over a pot of stew. She had tried to hide it, turning away quickly to wipe at her eyes. But Kael saw. He didn't say anything. He just pulled her into his arms and held her while she sobbed out 3 years of loneliness and pain of surviving, but not truly living, of believing she was broken and unworthy of love. He didn't try to fix it with words. He didn't tell her it was okay or that she shouldn't cry. He just held her and let her break, which was exactly what she needed. When the tears finally stopped, Kaia pulled back, embarrassed. "Sorry," she muttered. "I don't usually fall apart like that." "When was the last time you cried in front of someone?" Kael asked gently. Kaia had to think about it. 3 years, the night they exiled me." "Then you were overdue," Kael said simply. "And Kaia, you're not broken. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You just needed to let some of that strength go for a minute." On the 4th day, Kaia woke to find Kael's arms around her. They'd been sharing the bed since the first night the cabin too cold to have separate sleeping areas. But this was different. This was intentional. His body curved protectively around hers, his face buried in her hair. She should pull away. She should maintain distance. But she was so tired of being alone, so tired of fighting the one thing that felt good in a life full of hardship. So she stayed. And when Kael's arms tightened, pulling her closer, murmuring her name in his sleep, she let him. Let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe this was real. Maybe the moon goddess hadn't made a mistake this time. "You're awake." Kael's voice rumbled against her back when she shifted slightly. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you. I'm not complaining." His arms stayed around her warm and solid. "This okay?" "Yeah," Kaia whispered. "It's okay." They lay there in comfortable silence as the first light of dawn filtered through the shuttered windows. Kaia could feel Kael's heartbeat against her back, steady and strong. The mate bond pulsed between them, content and right in a way that terrified her, because it felt too good to be real, too perfect to last. "What are you thinking?" Kael asked. "This feels like a dream," Kaia admitted, "and I'm afraid I'll wake up and it'll all be gone." "It's not a dream," Kael promised. "I'm real. This is real and I'm not going anywhere." By the 5th day, when the blizzard finally broke and sunlight streamed through the windows, neither of them moved to pack or prepare to leave. The world outside called to them responsibilities and duties, waiting. But in this cabin, in this small space carved out of the wilderness, they had found something neither of them wanted to give up yet. "Come with me," Kael said over breakfast. "To the palace. I know you don't want to be around people. I know you're afraid. But I can protect you, and I need you, Kaia. Not just as my mate, but because someone tried to kill me, and they think they succeeded. I need someone I can trust. Absolutely. That's you." "I'm not royal," Kaia said softly. "I don't know anything about politics or courts or—" "You know about survival," Kael interrupted. "You know about reading people making hard decisions." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I don't need you to know politics. I need you to be you. And maybe while we're figuring out who tried to kill me, we could figure out this mate bond." Kael said, his voice calm but firm. Kaia looked down at their joined hands. His was large and warm, calloused from sword practice, but gentle in its hold. 3 years ago, her mate had refused to even touch her, recoiling from the thought of being bound to her. And now here was Kael, king of their kind, asking her to take his hand. "If I go with you," Kaia said slowly, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside, "and it turns out I really am cursed, that bad things really do follow me, you have to promise me something. Send me away. Don't try to protect me. Don't be noble. Just let me go." "I promise," Kael said without hesitation. "If bad things happen, we'll face them together. And if you want to leave, I won't stop you. But I won't send you away, Kaia. You're not cursed, and I'm going to prove it to you." The journey to the palace took 2 days. Kyle had memorized the landmarks during his poison flight, able to guide them to where he'd left his horse miraculously still alive and waiting. The guards at the border nearly fell off their horses when they saw their king emerging from the wilderness. "Your Majesty," the captain, a grizzled beta named Cade, looked like he'd seen a ghost. "We thought," the council said. Cale finished for him, his voice hard. "I'm sure they did. Tell me, Cade, who claimed to witness my death." "Councilors Vex, Martin, and Rylan." "Your Majesty," Cade stammered. "They said you were attacked by a rabid bear and that they couldn't recover your body before a snowstorm hit." Kyle's jaw clenched. Convenient. And what was the plan? Regency Council until your cousin came of age. Cade replied, glancing nervously at the others. "Yes, Your Majesty, with Vex Martin and Rylan leading it." "Of course," Cale muttered, turning toward Ember, who had been sitting quietly on the horse behind him. "Those are my would-be assassins, and they've spent the last week consolidating power." The palace was in chaos when they arrived. Servants scattered in every direction and guards scrambled into formation. Within moments, a crowd had gathered in the courtyard. Kyle dismounted and held his arms up to help Kaia down, his hands lingering at her waist. "Your Majesty," an older woman in formal robes rushed forward. "Sage." Kaia recognized her from the descriptions. She was the head healer and the oldest advisor to the throne. "We heard reports but couldn't believe you're alive," Sage said, shock and awe evident in her voice. "Very much so, Sage," Cale replied, pulling Kaia forward, ignoring her attempt to hide behind him. "This is Kaia. She saved my life when certain members of my council tried to end it." The murmurs were immediate. Mate the king found his mate, but also tried to end it. Assassination. Conspiracy. 3 men pushed through the crowd, their faces masks of shock and joy. Kaia didn't need Kel to tell her these were Vex Martin and Rylan. She could see the guilt in their eyes, could smell the fear barely hidden beneath the false joy. "Your Majesty," Vex the oldest spread his arms wide. "This is miraculous. We mourned you. The entire kingdom mourned. Tell us what happened. How you survived such a terrible attack." "I'm sure you're very curious," Kyle said, his voice pleasant but his eyes cold. "Since you were there when it happened, all 3 of you." The courtyard fell silent. Vex's smile faltered. "I don't understand, Your Majesty. We reported what we saw. A rabid bear." "There was no bear," Cale interrupted. "There was poison. Moonbane, to be specific. A substance that's been illegal for 2 centuries. A poison that trapped me in wolf form and left me to die in the wilderness." His voice carried across the courtyard, ensuring that everyone could hear. A poison that someone had to synthesize, someone had to administer, and someone had to obtain illegally. "Care to explain how that happened?" "Vex." Vex's face went white. Martin and Rylan looked ready to bolt. The guards, sensing the shift, quietly surrounded all 3 counselors. "This is absurd," Vex spluttered. "We would never—" "I nearly died," Cale continued, his voice deadly quiet. "Would have died if not for Kaia's gift. She pulled the poison from my body, saved my life at great cost to herself. And do you want to know what I remember about the moments before the poison took full effect? I remember water tasting wrong. Water that Martin handed me. I remember Rylan suggesting we hunt in an area far from the regular trails. And I remember Vex insisting the guards stay behind because we needed to bond as leaders." The 3 counselors stood frozen, their guilt written plainly on their faces. They'd been so certain he was dead, so confident their plan had worked, that they hadn't prepared a defense for this scenario. "You have 2 choices," Kyle said, his voice like ice. "Confess to attempted regicide and throw yourselves on the kingdom's mercy, or stay silent and let the investigation prove it for you. Either way, you're done." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Martin, younger and apparently less committed to the conspiracy than the others, cracked. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he said, his voice shaking. "Vex said you were making decisions that would weaken the kingdom. Said we needed stronger leadership. Moonbane was his idea. I went along with it. I'm sorry." Vex turned on him with a snarl, but guards were already moving in iron shackles, appearing with remarkable speed. Within minutes, all three counselors were bound and led away, their protests and accusations falling on unsympathetic ears. Kaia waited until they were gone before his shoulders sagged slightly. Kaia moved to his side, immediately offering silent support. He took her hand and squeezed it gratefully. "Well," Sage said, her voice carrying a note of satisfaction, "that was dramatic. Your Majesty, we should examine you fully. Moonbane can leave lasting effects even after Ember purified it." Kyle interrupted. "I've never felt better." Sage's eyes sharpened as she looked at Kaia for the first time with full attention. "Purification by the moon goddess. Girl, do you know how rare that gift is?" "I'm learning," Kaia said dryly. The days that followed were overwhelming. Kaia had gone from total isolation to being the center of royal attention, and it was about as comfortable as she'd expected, meaning not at all. But Kyle stayed close, deflecting the worst of it, giving her space to breathe when she needed it. The trials of Vex, Martin, and Rylan were swift. Martin's confession combined with evidence found in their quarters, including supplies used to synthesize Moonbane, sealed their fates. They were exiled to the Deadlands beyond the northern border where no packs dwelled, and survival was nearly impossible. Harsh but fair for those who tried to murder their king. Kaia found herself in Sage's healing rooms, learning to control and expand her gift. It turned out purification wasn't just about removing poison. She could cleanse infections, remove curse marks, and even purge certain types of dark magic. It was exhausting, demanding work. But for the first time in her life, Kaia felt useful. Felt like maybe she'd been given this gift for a reason. On the 7th day after their return to the palace, Kaia wandered through the gardens when she heard a voice she hadn't expected to hear again. "So it's true. You're alive and apparently you're queen now." She turned sharply to find Zane standing on the path behind her. Zane, the mate who had once rejected her. He looked older now, harder, much less impressive compared to Kaia. "I'm not queen," Kaia replied quietly, her eyes narrowing. "I'm the king's mate. There's a difference." "Semantics," Zane retorted, moving closer. Kaia noticed he was alone. No witnesses. That was interesting. "I heard what happened," Zane continued, his voice low. "How you saved the king. How you have some rare gift. Funny, though you never showed any of that when we were mated." "We were never mated," Kaia corrected him. "You rejected the bond before it could fully form." Zane's eyes flickered, and his face softened slightly. "Maybe I was hasty," he admitted. "Maybe I misjudged you. I'd like a second chance. A chance to do it right." Kaia stared at him, genuinely shocked. "You're joking." "I'm serious," Zane said, stepping closer, his voice low and almost pleading. "We were meant to be together, Kaia. The moon goddess chose us. What happened was a mistake, but we could fix it. I'd accept you this time. We could. You rejected me in front of my entire pack." Kaia interrupted, her voice shaking with anger now. "You called me cursed. Called me a harbinger of death. You looked at me with disgust and broke the bond that should have been the most sacred thing in our lives. And now, because I've been claimed by someone more powerful, someone who actually values me, you want a second chance?" Zane's face hardened. "What I wasn't worth keeping." "Not for you," Kaia shot back. "You wanted an Omega who'd make you look good, someone soft and agreeable who wouldn't challenge you. You didn't want a mate, you wanted a trophy." Kaia stepped forward and Zane actually took a step back. "But I'm not that Omega. I survived 3 years alone in the wilderness. I dragged an alpha king through a blizzard. I have a gift that can save lives. And I found a mate who looks at me like I'm precious instead of cursed. So no, Zane, I don't want a second chance with you. I want you to leave. You'll regret this, Zane snarled. When the king realizes what you really are, when your curse shows itself, you'll wish you had someone who knew you before. I know exactly what she is. Kale's voice came from behind Zane, cold and dangerous. The former mate spun around, his face going pale as he realized Kale had overheard everything. She's brave, Kale continued, stepping toward them with an air of authority. She's powerful. She's mine. And you're trespassing. Zane's wolf instinctively went submissive, his head lowering. Your Majesty. I didn't. You didn't? Kale interrupted sharply. Didn't try to manipulate my mate? Didn't call her cursed while simultaneously trying to claim her? Kale walked past Zane like he was insignificant, coming to stand beside Kaia. Let me make something very clear, Kyle said, his voice hard. Kaia is under my protection, not just as my mate, but as the kingdom's most valuable healer. If you or anyone from your pack approaches her again, it will be considered an act of aggression against the crown. Do you understand? Zane nodded jerkily, his eyes avoiding Kael's. I didn't hear you, Kael said, his alpha command, making everyone in the garden guards, servants, even Kaia, stand straighter. I understand, Your Majesty, Zane forced out. Good. Now get out of my palace. Zane fled, and Kaia found herself laughing. It was slightly hysterical, but genuine. That was incredibly satisfying, she said with a smirk. He's lucky I let him leave with all his limbs, Kale remarked, turning to her with a concerned look in his amber eyes. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, Kaia said, realizing it was true. I just told off the man who destroyed my life, and it felt amazing. Good, Kale said, pulling her close. You deserve to feel amazing. You deserve everything good this world can offer. What about the mate bond? Kaia asked quietly, her voice hesitant. We've been avoiding talking about it. I've been waiting for you to be ready, Kale admitted. The bond's there, pulling at both of us. But after what you've been through, I wanted you to choose, not feel pressured or obligated. Kaia pulled back enough to look at him, her heart racing. This man who had been nothing but patient with her, who had protected her, who had seen her worth when she had forgotten it herself, had given her space to breathe. He'd been willing to wait as long as it took for her to feel safe. I choose you, Kaia said, her voice steady. I choose us, and I choose to stop being afraid of being happy. Kael's smile lit up his face, transforming his usually serious expression into something bright and hopeful. Are you sure? I'm sure, Kaia replied. You saved me from a lot more than just loneliness, Kael. You reminded me that I'm worth saving. You saved yourself, Kael corrected, cupping her face in his hands. 3 years ago, when you chose to survive instead of giving up. I just got to be there when you were ready to live again. The mating ceremony was held a week later, small and private despite Kael's position. Kaia wore white furs, her platinum hair braided with winter flowers. Under the full moon, Kael marked her completing the bond that had been pulling at them, both since that first moment in the cabin. Kaia felt it, the bond settling into place like the final piece of a puzzle. She felt Kael's love, his certainty, his absolute conviction that she was exactly where she belonged. All the fear, all the doubt, all the years of believing she was broken finally fell away. She wasn't broken. She had never been broken. She'd just been waiting for someone strong enough to see her clearly. 3 years later, Kaia stood in the palace healing rooms, her hands glowing with golden light as she purified the infection from a soldier's leg. The soldier who had been told by his pack healer that he'd lose the limb watched in awe as healthy pink skin replaced the gangrenous tissue. You're a miracle, the soldier breathed. I'm a healer with a useful gift, Kaia corrected. pulling her hands back as the glow faded. Keep it clean. Rest for 3 days, and you'll be fine. Thank you, Your Majesty. Kaia still wasn't used to that title, even after 3 years of wearing a crown, but she'd learned to accept it, along with everything else that came with being Kael's mate. The politics, the protocol, the constant visibility, it was worth it for the nights when it was just the two of them, for the mornings when she woke in his arms, for the knowledge that she was valued and loved. She finished her rounds for the day and headed to their private chambers where Kael was waiting. He looked up from the reports he was reading, his face transforming with a smile that still made her heart skip a beat. How many today? He asked. 12, including a visiting alpha's daughter who'd been cursed. Kaia collapsed onto the couch beside him, and Kael immediately pulled her against his side. Took most of my energy, but I got it. Kaia said, her voice tired but satisfied. She should be fine. You're incredible, Kael said, kissing her temple. I'm exhausted, Kaia corrected, but a smile tugged at her lips. Also, I have some news. Something in her tone made Kael go still. What kind of news? The good kind, I hope. Kaia sat up and took his hand, gently placing it on her still flat stomach. Sage confirmed it this morning. Twins! Kael's eyes widened. Twins! We're having twins. Yes, Kaia confirmed, laughing at his shocked expression. In about 6 months. Are you happy? Happy. Kael's voice cracked as he pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was made of glass. I'm terrified, ecstatic, and completely overwhelmed. Twins by the moon goddess. We're having twins. They'll probably have your coloring, Kaia said. I've been reading the lineage texts. Golden alphas run strong in your family. I don't care what color they are as long as they're healthy, Kael said, his voice softening. As long as you're healthy. Kael pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes full of concern. Seriously, Kaia, this is dangerous. Carrying twins, you need to rest, conserve your energy. No more healing 12 patients in 1 day. I'll cut back to 8, Kaia teased, but her voice was light, though laced with exhaustion. Kaia, Kael warned, his tone serious. I'm joking. Mostly. She smiled softly, leaning in to kiss him. I'll be careful, I promise. But I'm not giving up healing completely. It's part of who I am now. I know, Kael said, resting his forehead against hers. I nearly lost you once, back when you were purifying me. I can't go through that again. You won't have to, Kaia promised, her voice strong. I'm stronger now, smarter, and I have you watching my back. The pregnancy proved challenging, as twin pregnancies often did, but Kaia had survived 3 years alone in the wilderness. She could handle this. Sage kept a close eye on her, and Kael was absurdly protective, to the point that Kaia had to ban him from hovering. The twins were born on a cold winter morning, snow softly falling outside the palace windows. A boy and a girl, both healthy, both loud. The boy had Kael's golden hair and Kaia's ice blue eyes. The girl had Kaia's platinum hair and Kael's amber eyes. Perfect, beautiful mirrors of their parents. What should we name them? Kael asked, cradling both infants with practiced ease while Kaia recovered. The girl is Ash, Kaia said immediately. For the white ash trees that grew near my old cabin. They were the only beautiful thing in that wilderness. Ash, Kael repeated, smiling down at his daughter. Perfect. And the boy? You choose, Kaia said, watching him closely. Kael was silent for a moment, his gaze soft as he studied his son's face. River. For the strength to flow around obstacles, for the persistence that carves stone, for never giving up. River and Ash, Kaia said softly. I love it. 5 years later, Kaia stood in the same healing rooms where she'd purified her first patient. Her 5-year-old twins were running circles around the examination table, their energy boundless, their laughter filling the air, They'd inherited their father's energy and her stubbornness, a combination that kept both parents perpetually entertained and exhausted. "Mama," Ash called out. "River says I can't be a healer like you because I'm an alpha." Ash pouted. "I did not," River protested, rolling his eyes. "I said alphas are usually warriors, but you can be whatever you want." Kaia bit her lip, hiding her smile. Her daughter had manifested early as an alpha, which was rare but not unheard of. River, on the other hand, had shown omega traits equally rare in a male. They were unique, special, and completely unaware of how unusual they were. Kaia appeared in the doorway, looking frazzled. "Anyone seen two small tornadoes disguised as children? I've lost track of them." "Papa." Both twins launched themselves at him, and Kaia caught them, effortlessly spinning them round. "There you are. I've been searching everywhere. Your tutors are waiting." "Can't we stay with Mama?" Ash asked, her voice full of pleading. "I have patience," Kaia said, ruffling Ash's golden hair. "But I'll see you at dinner." "And then Papa promised to tell you both the story," Kaia added. "What story?" River asked suspiciously. "About how I met your mother," Kaia said with a wink. "About a blizzard and a stubborn omega, and the worst journey of my life that led to the best thing that ever happened to me." "You always say that," Ash giggled. "Because it's always true," Kaia said, meeting Kaia's eyes over the twins' heads. Later, after the children were in bed and the palace had quieted, Kaia and Kaia stood on their private balcony looking out over the kingdom they ruled together. The same stars that had witnessed their desperate journey through a blizzard now shone down on a kingdom at peace, on a family built from the ashes of tragedy. "Do you ever think about that night?" Kel asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "The cabin, the blizzard. How close we both came to dying." "Sometimes," Kaia admitted, leaning back into his warmth. "Usually when I'm feeling overwhelmed by palace life, it reminds me that I've survived worse, that I'm stronger than I think. That one terrible night led to everything I have now." "You're stronger than anyone I've ever known," Kael said, his voice full of conviction. "You saved my life when you had every reason to leave me. You pulled poison from my body that should have killed you. You faced down your worst fears and came out the other side. And you built something beautiful from the worst moments of your life." "We built it," Kaia corrected, turning in his arms to face him. "I may have saved your life that night, but you saved mine too. You reminded me that I was worth saving, that I deserved to be loved, not feared, that my gift was valuable, not cursed. Always." Kael said, his amber eyes intense in the moonlight. "Every day, every choice, every moment. You're my mate, my queen, the woman who carried me through a storm when any sane person would have left me to die. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know you're valued, treasured, and absolutely irreplaceable." "I know," Kaia said, her voice steady. And this time she really did. The doubt that had plagued her for years, the belief that she was broken, had finally faded. "I finally know." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. From a dying wolf in the snow to a king. From an exiled omega to a queen. From two broken souls to a family filled with laughter and love. The mate bond hummed between them, content and complete. Kaia thought about the omega she had been 3 years ago. Alone in her cabin, convinced she was cursed, certain she'd die in solitude. That Kaia could never have imagined this, having a loving mate, beautiful children, and a purpose that went beyond mere survival. She thought about Zane, who'd called her a harbinger of death. He had been wrong. She wasn't death. She was life, renewal, healing. She'd pulled a dying king from darkness and helped him build a kingdom worth ruling. "Thank you," Kaia said softly. "For what?" "For being lost in a blizzard. For trusting me when you had no reason to. For waiting until I was ready. For choosing me every day, always." Kael promised. pulling her closer to kiss her properly, turning her in his arms. Every day, every choice. You're my mate, my queen. The woman who carried me through a storm. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know you're valued. I know, Kaia said. And this time she really did. I finally know. Somewhere in the mountains, in a cabin that still stood, despite years of abandonment, snow fell softly on the place, where two lives had changed forever. Where an Omega had chosen to save a stranger despite the cost. Where a king had learned that true strength sometimes came in the most unexpected packages. And in the palace and chambers that had once felt too grand and empty, a family slept peacefully. The king who'd been lost and the Omega who'd found him. The twins who would grow up knowing they were loved, wanted, and accepted, exactly as they were. The story of the Omega who carried a wolf through a blizzard became legend. But for Kaia and Kale, it was simply the beginning. The first step on a journey that led to everything they'd both been missing: home, family, love. The knowledge that sometimes the worst storms bring the greatest gifts. If you enjoyed this story of survival, healing, and second chances, please subscribe for more werewolf romance tales. Leave a comment telling me what you thought of Kaia and Kyle's journey from the frozen wilderness to building a family together. Your support means everything and helps me create more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.